As part of the recent protests on and around campus, there have been dozens of arrests made by university police, including several related terroristic threats. Does the university plan on requiring students, faculty, or staff arrested as part of these protests to receive further education on anti-Semitic behavior?
Congressman, is that a question for me?
It is. I'm sorry. Please.
Well, we're very committed to making sure everyone understands history and anti-Semitism for sure. The description of the arrests, I'd need to learn a little bit more about.
Well, the requests that have occurred, obviously, related to protests involving faculty or staff, students. The question is, within the consequences, when the university police are the ones that are intervening, whether there's any thoughts to further education for those individuals regarding anti-Semitic behavior and the impacts of it.
It's certainly consistent with my perspective and my values and the institution's values. I wonder if I could follow up with your team about the specifics of these arrests, because I don't know exactly what you're speaking about, but I agree with you that anyone who was arrested for an activity that was anti-Semitic, some act or something else, harassment, intimidation, should certainly receive education in addition to other consequences, in my opinion.
Sure, some criminal activity they were arrested for that was obviously driven by anti-Semitic beliefs and expressions. Several faculty members at Penn recently provided support for the boycott, divestment, and sanctions, or the BDS movement. The movement requires boycotting Israeli universities and individuals who are complicit in what they consider Israeli government misconduct. Therefore, it is impossible for a faculty member to support BDS and treat Israeli academics fairly. Can you tell this committee unequivocally that no such discrimination has taken place?
I appreciate the opportunity to clarify a very clear position that the University of Pennsylvania has had for many years, which is we strongly oppose boycotting, divesting, and sanctioning Israel. We have many flourishing it's contrary to academic freedom, among other things. It's singling out one state and treating it differently than others. We have many academic collaborations with universities in Israel. They're terrific collaborations. We're very clear on BDS. We are opposed to it, and our practices make that clear.
So as a part of that, and I'm a strong supporter of the right to free speech, including on college campuses, does University of Pennsylvania have any policies or procedures in place to ensure that BDS supporters cannot implement their boycott positions in their official capacities, or not given such individuals administrative powers to begin with?
Well, it's the position of the institution that we do not engage in boycotting, sanctioning, or divesting, and I would think that would follow for any member of the organization who is acting in their official capacity. But if you have specifics that I could follow up on after this hearing, I would very much like to hear them.
We'll do that. Appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Bonamici, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the witnesses. I appreciate the full committee's focus on this issue. I want to reiterate, as I did in the other hearing we had recently, that anti-Semitism, as well as Islamophobia and other forms of bigotry based on race, ethnicity, national origin, or religion are abhorrent and must not be tolerated. I'm deeply troubled by recent anti-Semitic incidents at colleges and universities across the country, including those whose presidents are here today. And I stand with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle in calling for proactive steps from all of these institutions of higher education to root out discrimination, hatred, and bigotry in all of its forms. I also want to note that the main point of this hearing should be to identify bipartisan solutions to combat anti-Semitism, not an excuse to attack higher education, liberal arts education, or important diversity, equity, and inclusion work that's happening at colleges and universities across the country. There are legitimate concerns about anti-Semitism on college campuses, and that's what we should focus on today. Not doing so is a disservice to the students across the country who are looking to Congress for support for and the public for the institutions. So during the previous hearing, I highlighted my support for additional funding for the Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights, and I want to join Representative Courtney in repeating that request today. OCR will be better able to enforce Title VI violations and protect students' civil rights with adequate staff and investigatory capacity. So I want to make that clear. We must do that. Dr. Nadel, thank you for being here and for your work over the years. Public colleges and universities, as we know, must uphold constitutional free speech rights. And many private institutions also recognize the value of free speech and robust debate. I think all of our presidents recognize that today, but also with the understanding that schools cannot allow their campuses to become places where anti-Semitic speech makes students unsafe or feel unsafe. I think that's recognized. So, Dr. Nadel, what are some of the best ways that colleges and universities can work to make their campuses welcome, safe, and inclusive spaces for all students in light of incidences of hate speech and discrimination, while also adhering to First Amendment principles?
So thank you for the question. I think there are different forms and different venues for expanding this discussion of the very difficult issue that has sparked and ignited the anti-Semitism or the outbursts on college campuses that we've been seeing since October 7th. So one form, obviously, is the classroom, although I would remind the members of the committee that the reality is that most students during their college career, they take a handful of courses. Many of them are studying STEM, and most of them are actually never in classrooms where they're hearing a discussion of issues like anti-Semitism or the conflict in Israel and Palestine. So that's the first thing that I would point out. So we academics can continue to foster those conversations, and we need to take them outside of the classroom. I think the other place where there can really be a lot of work done that would be very successful is on the side of student life on campus. And so student organizations are, they range broadly and widely on the campus, everything from a gardening club to obviously some of the student organizations that have been involved in the protests against Israel. So these are other places.
I don't want to cut you off, but
Yeah.
I have to get another question in. I'm running
sure.
out of time. But thank you
Okay.
for your work. And I also want to recognize as well the AJC action plan for confronting campus anti-Semitism. President Gay, I understand that there's an ongoing investigation of your institution by OCR because of anti-Semitic incidents that occurred on campus. And I know we'll be closely monitoring the outcome, but in the interim and over the long term, what can Congress do to support your institution and other colleges in preventing discrimination? And also, if you could also respond in the brief time, you mentioned that Harvard will not permit speech that incites violence or threatens safety. And I'd like you also to address who decides that and how and in what time frame.
Thank you, Congresswoman, for your questions. You're correct that there is an ongoing investigation, and obviously I can't comment on an active investigation other than to say we will work with the office to answer all of their questions. And I will say the work of the office is vitally important for ensuring students have access to educational opportunities. So I fully support the work that they do and hope that the office gets the resources that it needs to be effective. With respect to I believe the question was about student conduct. So again, we are deeply committed to free expression, but when speech crosses over into conduct that violates our policies, policies against bullying, harassment, intimidation, we do take action. And we do have faculty-led student disciplinary processes that are quite robust. And even over the last couple of months, as there have been incidents, we've been leaning into those processes, and we do have disciplinary actions underway.
Thank you. My time has expired. I yield back.
I now recognize Mr. Wahlberg for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thanks to the panel for being here. These are difficult times and difficult subjects, but they need to be addressed because leadership matters, and you are leaders in academia, at your institutions as well, and leadership matters. President Gay, I was taken by some words in your opening statement where you said, cure for anti-Semitism is knowledge. I would go where angels fear to tread and suggest that it might be better going back to the original motto idea for Harvard, which was Veritas, truth, that the cure for anti-Semitism is not simply knowledge. It's truth. Knowledge puffs up. Knowledge sometimes is based upon falsehoods. I think that's what we're facing right now in the climate on campuses, is that we're missing the fact of truth and allowing, under the guise of free speech, knowledge that isn't true to be exhibited in actions as well. So President Gay, in the weeks since October 7th, and again in your testimony, you have said that Harvard's commitment to free speech extends to views that are objectionable or outrageous. Are you aware that Harvard is ranked dead last on the 2024 Foundation of Individual Rights and Expression scorecard of universities on freedom of speech?
Thank you, Congressman, for the question. Respectfully, I disagree with that perspective as represented in the report that you cited. I don't think it's an accurate representation of how Harvard treats speech on campus. We are committed to free expression and to making space for a wide range of views and perspectives on our campus.
With all due respect, let me move on a bit.
Bedrock.
I would expect that you wouldn't agree with that. I understand that. And I would expect that the University of Penn, the same would be true, that you wouldn't agree that you're second to last on that same scorecard. But President Gay, did you know that 70% of Harvard students say that shouting down a speaker is acceptable?
That is not okay.
I appreciate that. It seems that perhaps Harvard's commitment to free speech is pretty selective. As you are no doubt aware, prominent alumnus Bill Ackman tweeted you a letter on Sunday, and in that letter, and I have that tweet, I guess that's the beauty of social media, you can get those things. In that letter, he highlighted 2 cases of Harvard faculty members who were canceled because of views deemed too controversial for your campus. Tyler J. Vanderweel was deemed guilty for those crimes related to his views on marriage and abortion. And then Carol Hoven, an evolutionary biologist, was forced to resign because she stated that a person's sex is biological and binary. Mr. Ackerman's letter also included quotes from a number of faculty highlighting the culture of fear that pervades Harvard's campus for those with views out of step with campus orthodoxy. And so, President Gay, in what world is a call for violence against Jews protected speech, but a belief that sex is biological and binary isn't?
Thank you for your question. So from the moment that our students arrive on campus, whether it is to begin their Harvard journey as an undergraduate or at one of the professional schools, the message to them is clear, that we are an inclusive community, but one deeply committed to free expression. And that means that we have expectations that that right is exercised mindfully and with empathy towards others. We reinforce that during their time at Harvard by helping them build the skills that allow them to engage in constructive dialogue, even on the most complex and divisive issues. Because what we seek is not simply free expression, but the reasoned dialogue that leads to truth and discovery and that does the work of moving us all forward. We don't always get it right, and our students don't always get it right. And when they transgress, they're held accountable.
As well, don't they? Your professors come under that as well, don't they?
Absolutely.
And so for Professor Vanderweel and Hoven, that didn't work for them. The free expression of views, at the very least, views, whether fact or truth, I guess we'll leave that to understanding, but nonetheless, they were removed from their positions. And I think that sends a message in this case with Jewish students, that they're of less importance. I yield back.
Mr. Chicano, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to our witnesses for being here. I do wish we could meet under different circumstances. President Gay, many individuals hold that Harvard did not condemn the attack against Israel swiftly enough. And I'd like to give you an opportunity to briefly react. Can you tell us why the university did not react as quickly as other universities might have or others might have hoped Harvard would have?
Thank you, Congressman, for the question. And respectfully, the notion that Harvard did not react is not correct. From the moment I learned of the attacks on October 7th, I was focused on action to ensure that our students were supported and safe. On that first day, we were focused on identifying whether we had any students or faculty who were in Israel and needed our assistance, including in getting out. On October 8th, I joined students and other members of the Jewish community at Harvard Hillel for a solidarity dinner to be there in support and also to learn more what their needs were. In the days after, not only did I condemn the attacks, I've continued to condemn the attacks, and furthermore have continued to stay in conversation with our Jewish community on campus about their evolving needs to ensure that the university is providing them with the support that they need during this very challenging time.
Thank you, President Gay. Do you consider yourself a subject matter expert on anti-Semitic behavior?
Excuse me, could you repeat that question?
Do you consider yourself an expert on anti-Semitic behavior, subject matter expert?
No, I don't. But I know this, that anti-Semitism is hate or suspicion of Jews. And that is all I need to know to take action to address it on our campus.
Thank you. Real quickly, other than Professor Nadal, do other witnesses consider themselves to be experts on anti-Semitism? Just a simple yes or no.
No, I do not.
No, I do not, but I learn.
Thank you. Well, my point is that this is the second legislative hearing on this topic in a month, and the majority has failed to bring forth any witnesses who can speak on how to address this issue and how to take concrete steps to combat anti-Semitism. President Gay, it is my understanding that you have communicated to the Harvard community some of the specific steps you are implementing to combat anti-Semitism and continue to foster student and community engagement. You've already mentioned a few of the things that you've done since September 8th, but can you highlight some of these steps?
Thank you for the question. So I've had repeated communications with the campus community about the steps that we're taking, both immediate steps and longer-term action towards combating anti-Semitism. To begin, we've focused on enhancing the physical safety of the campus and the campus community. That includes an increased police presence, both plainclothes and uniformed officers, 24/7 threat monitoring, both on campus and online, coordination on a daily basis with state, local, and federal law enforcement, and when necessary, we've taken the steps of closing the gates to Harvard Yard to limit the ability of outside actors to use our campus as a platform. We've also made it easier for students or any community member to report concerns and any kind of conduct that is threatening. We've also enhanced counseling and mental health services, including trauma-informed care. We've created community spaces so that students and faculty and staff can gather and to be together to process the tragedy. We're also working on...
Excuse me, President Gay. Thank you. Are these actions only intended to assist Jewish students?
These are resources that we're making broadly available to our community, but we're being particularly mindful to make sure that they are responsive to the needs of our Jewish community, as well as our Muslim, Arab, and Palestinian students who are also experiencing tremendous grief and are also fearful and distraught during this time.
President Gay, universities stand as centers of thought, and it is of the utmost importance to strike a balance between First Amendment speech protections and the safety of students and faculty. But when speech crosses into the line of conduct, it's essential that universities act swiftly. Harvard is a private university, and private IHEs have different parameters to operate under than public IHEs. Does this give Harvard a pass to avoid protecting free speech?
We are deeply committed to protecting free expression, even of views that we find objectionable and outrageous and offensive. But when that expression crosses into conduct that violates our policies around bullying, harassment, intimidation, threats, we take action, and we do not hesitate to take action.
Thank you. My time is up, and I yield back to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chicano. Mr. Grossman, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'm going to follow up on some of the things Mr. Wilson had to say. Just playing around here a little bit on the internet, in 2016, they found about 2% of the faculty of Harvard were viewed President Trump, I think, as okay or good. And I think in the 2020 election, the Crimson, your local paper there, found 1% of the students voting for Donald Trump, which, given that nationwide is about 50-50, was kind of shocking. Does it concern you at all that you apparently have a great deal, a lack of ideological diversity at Harvard, and do you think that atmosphere is maybe one of the reasons why there seems to be such an outbreak of anti-Semitism at your institution?
Is that question for me?
That's the question for you, yeah. And I'll ask you, what are you going to do about it? Do you think it's a concern?
So we strive to have as diverse a faculty as we can, because we want to make sure that we are sampling from the broadest pool of talent available in the world. That's how we ensure academic excellence.
From what I read here, maybe they're making stuff up, but I don't think they're making it up. We said 2% of your faculty viewed Donald Trump as something other poor in 2016, and after 4 years of working for diversity, 1% voted for him. Now, I know all sorts of good people who don't like President Trump, but I'm just saying, when you compare the way people think at your campus compared to America as a whole, if there's one thing you are, it's not diverse, right? Do you consider that a problem, or the numbers I gave you?
So, Congressman, I can't speak to the specific data that you are referring to. What I can say is that at Harvard, we try to create as much space as possible for a wide range of views and perspectives, because we believe that allows for a thriving academic community.
How in the world is that even possible? And that you're trying to do that? Do you really feel that your faculty are ideologically diverse? You came out of a political science background at Stanford?
At Stanford, as an undergraduate, I was an economics major, and then for my PhD, it was a PhD in political science.
Political science, that's what I thought. Did you experience what you would say, given America's divided now 50-50, about 50-50, or was it 75-25 or 90-10 regarding to more a constitutional conservative perspective or more of a left-wing perspective? What is your experience both at Harvard and Stanford?
So here's what I can say on the topic that you're exploring. And it's, we want the most brilliant, talented faculty to come to Harvard and to build their careers there.
They're only giving me 5. You're not going to answer the question. They only give me 5 minutes. Is it common at Harvard to ask faculty to submit a diversity statement?
That's a practice that varies across schools at Harvard.
So sometimes you do. Well,
in some cases, there are schools that ask for that.
Okay. Could a scientist ever get cut from consideration from a job because they had the wrong view of diversity?
What I would say is that we aim to draw to our faculty the broadest pool of talent.
When you hear that, and this is not the way I wanted this to go, but when you hear that 1% of your faculty voted for a presidential candidate who got about 50% of the vote nationwide, does that concern you, or do you feel you're not as diverse as you should be?
What I'm focused on is making sure that we're bringing the most academically talented faculty to our campus and that they are effective in the classroom.
I'll give you one more question because I want to go to the gal from Penn. Has Harvard ever made a faculty job contingent on a strong diversity statement?
We look at everything a faculty member will bring to our campus. Academic brilliance and excitement and ability to teach a campus community and student community.
Now I want to go to Ms. McGill. I have a friend whose son goes to the University of Pennsylvania. Right now he is physically afraid to go to the library at night. Okay, just unbelievable. Could you, I just can't even conceive that's going on in the United States of America, but that's what she tells me. She doesn't make it up. Could you give us your reasons as to why that is true at Pennsylvania, why today a Jewish student is afraid to walk to the library at night?
Congressman, let me start by saying I'm devastated to hear that, and the safety and security of our campus and our students in particular is my top concern. I would, if you would be willing, I would like to talk to your constituent and their Penn student. I'm very troubled by what you're reporting. It's our top priority to keep our students safe.